Hello everyone, welcome to Analog IAS Current Affair Analysis for 9th December 2020. In this video, we'll be discussing a couple of issues. We'll be looking at the draft e-commerce policy that was released by the government yesterday, the potential of e-commerce in digital India and how it can contribute for inclusive growth. What are the concerns with this policy? Let us have a complete analysis of this issue. The second one is with the Khalistan issue. Let us have a look at what this Khalistan movement is, how it is relevant for our GS1 post independent India syllabus, and the present relevance of this issue. So, e commerce has a lot of potential in the post pandemic world. If you have taken a look at how the country responded, especially in the urban areas, it has unlocked the potential of e commerce after the lockdown period. Say you have, for example, Big Basket, Grofers, or even delivery apps like Zomato venturing into grocery deliveries. So, this has shown that e commerce has a lot of potential. Going forward, it can create a lot of jobs and also integrate a lot of small farmers into mainstream retail. In February 2019 itself, the government has come up with a draft e-commerce policy which focused on ensuring a level playing field between online and offline retailers along with data security and data storage norms. To complement this, now the government came up with national retail trade policy. So this would focus on simplifying the rules with respect to creating an environment which is conducive for retail trade, which also includes certain parameters like simplifying rules and regulations, which are acting as roadblocks for the growth of this sector. This is a very important move because retail has a very fantastic opportunity to reinvent itself to serve customers and consumers in the pandemic, as we have seen in the case of e-commerce. Now, if we can integrate e-commerce with this retail traders, it will also ensure the last mile delivery of groceries, but also it will be applied for marketing those kind of produce, like say for example tribal products, which were considered to be less significant when it comes to reaching out to the market. The reason why tribal products were not accessible to normal public is because of their lack of marketing ability. Now, e-commerce policy along with national retail trade policy can address this issue. So, in this context, we have to understand that the launch of an e-commerce policy would at a time also encourage the sector. Right now, if you take a look, Amazon and Flipkart are dominating the scene completely. There is no competition. So, in a monopoly, competition is definitely needed, and it will also encourage the efficiency of the markets and also ensure that the end consumer is benefited. Say, for example, today with the entry of Geo, we have a revolution in telecom market, but it is not wise to have a single market dominant player dominating the entire telecom scene in the future. Having more choices for consumers and possibly more discounts is always better for the end consumer. So, in this aspect, when we're talking about the e-commerce policy, one more important aspect is ease of payment. So, our payments gateways have increasingly become much more easier with the advent of UPI, which has been a phenomenal success till now. One gray area in e-commerce policy is the algorithmic transparency. So when you are talking about marketplaces like Amazon, if there is an algorithm which is biased towards a particular seller, the algorithm will push that particular seller in the search results. So your success is actually determined by the algorithm of this platform. So there should be certain transparency and accountability in how these algorithms are designed. That is one aspect that e-commerce policy should address. Now, another aspect is the issue of data. There has been debates about data localization. That is, if a particular data is generated within a particular geography, like say for example, if the data of Indian users is retained in India itself, it will stop the data platforms like, I mean, the platforms like Amazon to leverage it or manipulate it elsewhere. But the downside of this argument is companies can always create mirrors of this data in their own warehouses elsewhere as well. So, given this fact, we also have to create a data policy as soon as possible that will be uh, tuned in tandem with the e-commerce policy. Similarly, we also have legislations like the Consumer Protection Act, which has recently brought the e-commerce domain also under its ambit. The IT Act, the Foreign Exchange Management Act, all this together will work towards the ease of doing business in the e-commerce sector. So, together with these reforms, we also have to undertake structural reforms to reimagine how e commerce can actually ensure inclusive growth. If you study the market trends right now, without digital presence in the post pandemic world, a business will not be so successful. So, given this fact, uh, that a lot of MSMEs also require simple marketing, and e-commerce is one such platform which can help these MSME sector reach out to the public and let them know about the quality of products that they produce. So this marketing aspect will be taken care by these e-commerce platforms, and going forward, this is a huge revenue generator for the country as well. That is the gist of this article. The second article for the day is taken from the Hindu and it is titled Constant Vigilance. This is with respect to the Khalistan movement. So recently, a few terrorists were arrested in Delhi and they were linked to the murder of a Surya Chakra awardee, Mr. Balwant Singh. So this has brought the long done and dusted movement of Khalistan back again into the picture, and now it is mysteriously being linked to the Punjab farmers protest. So this is not a rhetoric that is healthy for the society, and therefore the intelligence bureau and other intelligence agencies which are responsible for maintaining the law and order and security of our country should pay attention to this Khalistan movement again if it is reviving like it is anticipated, and also ensure that the conspiracy theories end without spreading in the social media. So let us take this opportunity to understand the GS1 aspect of post independent India. What is Khalistani movement, what are its origins, and what are its implications for the unity and integrity of our country, especially the Punjab region. So, from the times of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, that is somewhere around 1700s, Punjab was constituted into 12 missals. So, at the time of independence in 1947, a lot of Punjabis were not really happy because their lands got separated between India and Pakistan. So, a lot of Sikhs chose to stay back in Pakistan but later migrated to India. But in the process, they've also had to leave out a lot of land in Pakistan as well. And similarly, Indian side also had sympathizers for a separate country of Punjabis. So that started the spirit of Khalistan movement, a separatist movement which acted as a threat to the Indian sovereignty. So in 1960s, NRIs from Canada and elsewhere, especially the sympathizers who wanted a separate country for Punjabis or Sikhs, suggested that they start a movement or encourage a movement in India towards the same objective. So this Khalistan movement began as an expatriate venture. So they gave financial and political support to the Sikh diaspora. Uh, they have mobilized the support from all the Sikhs across the world, and resources started pouring in from all the places into this organizations which were fueling the sentiments of Khalistan. In order to channelize these attempts, in 1966, the Indira Gandhi led government has accepted to reorganize the state, and Punjab was trifurcated, creating Punjab, Haryana, and transferring certain areas to Himachal Pradesh. So, exclusive Sikh areas had Punjab under them. In 1972 elections, Akali Dal, the Sikh political party, was defeated in the elections. To regain public appeal, the Akali Dal then put forward the Anandpur Sahib resolution. According to this resolution, they demanded radical devolution of power, almost to the sort of a autonomy to Punjab. This was not accepted. But the resolution document included both religious and political issues. It asked for recognizing Sikhism as a religion separate from Hinduism and transfer of Chandigarh and surrounding areas to Punjab directly. At this point of time, there was a powerful leader called Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale, who was a major Khalistani supporter. Prior to this, he was with the Congress, and the Indira Gandhi government thought that they could use this person as an interlocutor, but he later turned the tables and joined the Khalistani movement. So, Bhindranwale, along with Akali Dal, started a organization called Dharam Yudh Morcha in 1982 in order to implement the Anandpur Sahib resolution. So, the Khalistani movement began as an expatriate venture, now started becoming even more violent, and this has eventually led to the formation of National Council of Khalistan. In 1983, the Akali Dal leader Haricharan Singh Longowal has invited Mr. Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale to occupy the residence in Amritsar's Golden Temple. In 1984, Indira Gandhi's government has carried out the Operation Blue Star to remove Bhindranwale from the Golden Temple. So, this continued for 8 days from June 1st to June 8th. Indian government has succeeded in removing Bhindranwale from the Golden Temple, but it also hurt the religious sentiments of Sikhs. They did not like the Indian military occupying the sacred place of Harmandir Sahib. So, in 1984, Indira Gandhi was assassinated by her two Sikh personal security guards, Satwant Singh and Beant Singh. And this has triggered communal violence across Delhi in 1984, which is considered to be one of the largest pogroms in the post-independent India. So, this furious violence has eventually subsided after the flame of anti-Sikh riots because of the involvement of the local Sikh population against these tendencies because of their own patriotic tendencies. So, there was a lot of comparison after the Khalistani movement ended and the beginning of Jammu and Kashmir insurgency that Khalistani elements were linked to this ISI militants because they were historically known to fund these militants of Khalistan because of the bitterness that Pakistan had faced after the 1971 war and the result of Bangladesh formation. They were humiliated by the Indian government and they wanted to get back at us. So recent trends show that there has been a increase in another movement which has been fueling this Khalistani sentiments. So even if this is a conspiracy theory, the authors suggest that we have to ensure that such kind of secessionist tendencies shall not be evoked again. And in the present farmers context, just because Punjab farmers are protesting against the farm laws, these kind of theories are doing the circles in social media. So this is not a healthy environment, and we don't want to evoke such kind of emotions again, and we have to learn from our history. That is the gist of this article.